And just let me save this thing as... Okay, now I'll know what that is. First thing I'd like to do is ask everybody. I'm going to put you on gallery view so I can see you all. I'm going to ask everybody how many people, just show of physical hands, have actually got Linux installed on something.
How many versions?
Go ahead, Tim. You had another question?
I said, how many versions?
Personally, 3.
I got one.
Anybody else have at least one?
Just one.
And that's Mint?
Mint.
Okay.
And Ted, you've got Mint?
You're muted, Ted.
There, unmuted. Yeah, I got Mint, an old version. I just fired it up, and it looks like I've got several days worth of updates.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You got to keep that sucker up to date. Not a joke. It's not a joke, and it goes pretty quickly for the most part.
Okay, we stalled long enough to get Pete in here. Pete, have you got Linux installed on at least one machine?
Yes.
And which Linux is it? Is it Mint?
It is. Mint is the one we've been working on, right?
Right.
Yes.
Good.
That machine is not up and running right now?
Yeah.
Because of the shape of the shop.
Okay.
I'm working on my Windows one, so
Yeah, that's my project that's one of my next projects. So we were just chatting with Ted about, he has an old Mint. So, Ted, you might be interested as much as anybody else in, oh, by the way, Dennis, did you say you were going to try to install Mint on something?
I have a computer that I would like to install Mint on. It's a nice machine, but I'm kind of waiting for... we had a discussion once before, and you were talking about, Bob, maybe having a meeting somewhere where users could get together to install, or maybe if Tim had another one of those. He did a great presentation, a year ago online. People install. I wasn't able to take advantage of that at the time. Something else where I am afraid to do it myself. Let's put it that way. But
well, that video is out on,
I have a machine I'd like to do it. Yeah.
That video is out on the YouTube channel for the Chicago Computer Society, so you can view it at any time.
Okay.
Now, it's not the greatest because at the time I have not used a virtual machine in a long time where I could capture it all right on the running computer, but I had to use an external camera on the screen, and it does wash out some, but it's all the necessary information really is there. But
and it could be the videos on my older machines that, I've looked at that, the video that you created, when we were online and you were helping us all trying to do it. I've looked at it, and there are screens that are just, I try to read it, I get up close, it's just not legible. I think maybe it's just my machines don't have the video pixels to read it.
No, it's a case where that was the quality of the video recording from external camera, and there wasn't jack you could do about it. Now, right now, if we have to wait for me to try and create another tutorial, we're all going to probably be in our graves.
Okay, Tim and Dennis, I think you're in luck. I took the time this week to throw together some things where there are tutorials with screenshots that are still photos that are clear as day. You will know what you're supposed to see with an interesting little tool called Ventoy, and you will know what you are supposed to see once you actually do an install. Because my upgrade for 2 versions of Ubuntu was a clean install on at least one of the machines. In fact, both of them. And the relevant one is my Intel NUC PC because it's a fairly normal PC. It's just that it multi-boots, it dual boots with Windows, and then there's a couple of Linuxes. It doesn't matter that they're on an external enclosure. Let's forget about the details of the hardware. It's pretty much the same. If you have 2 operating systems trying to coexist, you will run into some of the issues that I may discuss. And I think this will be relevant to people like Pete, even if you're not dual booting. And Ted, you are upgrading, probably, at least at some point. And you're definitely doing a lot of updating.
Yes, right now.
Yeah, and I will try to get into a little bit. First, I want to, and of course for Wayne, this will be of interest as well, because Mint is going to undergo a version upgrade sometime during the summer or fall. And some people may want to upgrade to the 2204 kernel, because the 2204 kernel from Ubuntu is a long-term stability release. What do I mean by this? Long-term stability means it's supported for 5 years, and it means you do not have to upgrade that version if you don't want to for a long, long time. It won't go out of support. Whereas the interim versions, like 2110, for example, are going to go out of support much sooner. This is very different from Windows. Windows does not have long-term stability releases any longer. Once upon a time, it did. So what we are able to do is, I think I want to go over some announcements that have been made, and I think I'll be able to share my screen. And I might get to Xubuntu eventually, but I think what we will do, people are seeing my document now, of course, and I think I want to keep that left-hand panel, even though it's, well, this is a good enough view, because this will give me a browser to work with, and you'll be seeing the same thing. There are several, and I will include this PDF in chat eventually at the end of the toward the end of the meeting. Ubuntu has just undergone a long-term stability upgrade. Ubuntu 2204, Jammy Jellyfish is what they call it. They always have cute little names involving animals and attributes, is coming to Mint sometime later this year. I just upgraded a Chromebook, which is beyond the scope of this group, and I upgraded my Intel NUC PC to Jammy. Here are a few things to know and some advice on upgrading should you choose to do so. Unlike Windows or Mac, upgrading is not required. You won't lose the ability to use a long-term stability release like 2004, which is, I think, what Mint 20.3 is based on currently. Or if you have 20.2, that's okay too. That's still in support. 20.1, I would probably upgrade. Anything earlier than 20 in Mint, I would upgrade. So this is a publication called OMG Ubuntu, and I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to reduce you guys to the point of vanishing. Okay, and we're going to okay the cookies. What happens in normal Ubuntu is you'll get a software updater, which will pop up a notification that you can upgrade to the next LTS or the next version. This is especially true if you have an interim version like 2110. If you have an LTS version, you won't get this notification until about midsummer, even in Ubuntu. Why not? Because long-term stability releases wait till the .1 version, till 2204.1 comes out, and that'll be later this summer. Ubuntu is on pretty much of a cadence. Mint will delay their upgrades if they feel there's a reason to delay. So it may or may not be on a particular cadence. It's when it is ready, which is a good way to go, because we all know what happens when both Linux and especially those who use Windows, when they push out the next version and they really aren't ready to do so. And it shows in everything you do. Windows 11 is going through that process right now, at least until it's .1 version, which is the fall upgrade, the fall feature update, they call it. But here they're called upgrades just like we normally would have in traditional Windows. So you can upgrade Ubuntu to 22.04, which is what I've done from an earlier version. You can do it from an earlier version, or you can do a clean install. If you're moving from long-term stability to the next long-term stability, a clean install is really the way to go. You don't want all kinds of accumulated garbage from the last 4 or 5 years, or even 2 years, hanging around. I wouldn't want that in Windows either. And you wouldn't want to have a huge number of system components that all want to be upgraded all at once to vastly different versions. You're going to get problems. You're going to get conflicts. You will have stuff break. Better to start out with the current long-term stability version. But if you're on 2110, you might want to do an in-place upgrade. And with Mint, if you're already up to 20.3, when the next one comes up, which will be their version 21, and it's called Vanessa, by the way, you will probably want to do an in-place upgrade, which in Mint is going to get a lot easier pretty soon. There's a new way of doing it that they are going to introduce. But if you want to do an in-place upgrade, you do not need to download the ISO and do what Tim has shown us already.
Yeah.
And Wayne, you weren't saying anything, were you?
No, I was just nodding.
Okay.
I was going to mention, I just looked up Linux Mint on my Linux Mint machine.
Yes.
But if you go to linuxmint.com,
Yes.
it shows you the latest one is 20.3, and it
Right.
has an option to click on the installation instructions, so it tells you how to do it.
Yes, it will tell you how to do an in-place update right there.
Yeah.
And this article is just a popularized version of that information.
Yeah.
That's a good catch, Wayne, because yes, Mint does a really good job and they have good forums at their site. If you ever go astray, that's one place to go. Their advice.
I was on 20.2, when we first started this.
Yeah.
And when it came out to 20.3, I clicked on this and I went through it and I totally reinstalled.
Yeah. What I did was an in-place upgrade, which could be done through the Mint Updater.
Yeah.
And I think we may have seen this before because I think Tim showed it to us once. But in any event, you can upgrade directly to Ubuntu 22.04, and in Mint you have a way of doing that too.
Yeah.
And so this article shows how to do it in Ubuntu. And basically you need a working internet connection and a fully updated version of your operating system, whether it's long-term stability or whether it's the current version, preferably the current version. And then these instructions are specific to Ubuntu. And Ubuntu uses a do release upgrade command. And that is what installs the upgrade module. Mint does it through that software updater. So it's just one of your available updates. And you just simply click on go ahead and install it. And it'll do all this under the hood. But in the background, it's really doing the same thing. It's doing it for you. And so it will disable your old version repositories and software sources. So if you ever roll back, you're going to have to re-enable those.
Yeah.
Again, in Mint, they have the graphical way of doing it, but in Ubuntu, you might have to do it through the command line. And most of it happens automatically. You won't need to do anything but wait. And, don't abandon your system entirely as there are configuration matters that you will be asked yes or no to authorize, whether you want a newer package to overwrite your older package. You don't have to let it do that. If you need something like GTK 2 or 3 and it wants to go up to 3 or 4, or Python 3 it wants to go up to, but you know you need Python 2, you can simply say, no, I don't want to upgrade that yet. So that's all part of the upgrade process. You have choices. It's different from Windows, different from Apple, very different from Apple, from Mac. There, you get what they give you. So once the upgrade is complete, you just reboot your computer and you'll move from, in this case, Impish up to Jammy. And in the case of Mint, you moved from Umba up to Una, which I did. Anything else that I need from this article? Probably not. So let me get back to this document. And here's something about Mint. This is an article which is from the Linux Mint blog. And it's going to tell you something. When you upgrade, before you do anything, make a backup. In Mint, you have a wonderful tool called Timeshift. However, this will tell you some things about Timeshift that show you need to do more. Prepare for the upgrade. You disable your screensaver. If you installed any cinnamon spices, which are applets, desklets, extensions, or themes, try to get them as up-to-date as possible. Upgrade them. Then you upgrade the operating system. And again, the graphical interface will take you through this. In the Update Manager, click on the refresh button to check for any new version of Mint Update or Mint Upgrade Info. Oh, interesting little sidebar. Just the other day, I got a message from the Update Manager that said there's a new version of the Update Manager available. And it wouldn't do anything. It wouldn't do anything else until I did this. I believe this is in preparation for Vanessa.
That happened to me tonight. When I clicked on, I upgraded the manager.
That happens quite a bit because I've seen that so many times just with Mint alone. It's not funny. It's like every other month, roughly, they're having some kind of an update to the updater.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this is a good thing because it means you have your software sources and your entire repository all up to date. So it's got the right packages that it refers to, and it'll probably be pretty much quicker and smoother. And it may also clean up some things if you had anything that didn't install properly. Things happen like broken packages, which have to be fixed. And the whole upgrade, the updater process does a little bit of that housekeeping, and sometimes you have to do other things. But as long as you don't have anything showing up broken or the installer won't do stuff, then you can proceed to launch the system upgrade by clicking Edit, Upgrade to, in the case of those who are going to do Una 20.3, you'll upgrade to Linux Mint 20.3 Una and follow the instructions on the screen. And there will be quite a number of several screens and several instructions. It'll go through everything in that left-hand column and then some. And at the end, it'll ask you to configure and set up your new version. You could change themes. Personally, I don't like the dark theme that they like to use in modern operating systems. So I did go to a Mint-wide light theme. But you don't have to. You can do just whatever there is. I did install the legacy themes so that I could have a light theme. So you could do Mint Themes Legacy. You don't have to. But this is a command line thing. And it's usually sudo apt install. When you're using apt, do sudo because this is a root or administrator task. It's like installing software in Windows. What are you going to get first? A UAC asking for your administrator password. So then you reboot the computer. Once the upgrade is finished, there are some commonly asked questions. If the upgrade is not available to you, check that you have the latest versions of Mint Update. In this case, it still is 5.7.8 or higher, and Mint Upgrade Info, and restart the Update Manager, etc. If the latest versions of Mint Update and Mint Upgrade Info are not yet available in your mirrors, switch to the default repositories. You can change mirrors in the Mint Updater. Since I'm in Ubuntu right now, I'm not going to be able to show that to you, unfortunately. And this happens rarely, but if you ever get locked and are unable to log back in, they show you a way to do things that probably will help. If you have problems booting after an upgrade, there's something you can do from a USB stick if you have had the foresight to create this. There's a bootable tool called Grub Boot Repair, and it's an ISO, it's a disk. And I can probably jump right to that at some point. But I do want to point out one more thing about the Vanessa upgrade, which is in another article. And 9to5Linux is also a really nice site to find Linux information. That and OMG Ubuntu have a lot of stuff. By the way, Make Use Of also does some things with Linux. So the Linux Mint project leader announced that there is an upcoming Mint 21 release, codenamed Vanessa. And it will come with Cinnamon, XFCE, or Mate. But there will be no KDE Plasma edition, which we aren't worried about anyway. We use Cinnamon. And by the way, in Ubuntu, on my Chromebook, I have to use XFCE because it is a much leaner, more resource-friendly desktop environment. It does look different. What you're seeing on my screen with this sidebar here is actually Ubuntu using the old Unity 7 desktop environment. And this is their famous launcher, which is one of the key things. It's a very smooth launcher, which only shows you only focuses on what you're using at any one time. And there's a whole fork of Ubuntu now called Ubuntu Unity. It was created by someone who at the time was only 12 years old, and he lives in India. And yet his English, being younger generation, his English is perfect. So he's a very energetic and very active developer, and he's bringing back Unity to Ubuntu, which is something a lot of people prefer to the current GNOME and Wayland. There are real problems with GNOME and Wayland for some people because it's a very different mindset as to how you customize and how you use the desktop. And I'm not going to confuse people by talking about that because I don't use it. What I'm using uses Xorg just the same way that Cinnamon uses Xorg. And so graphically and in terms of desktop behavior, rather similar, except for this sidebar, this launcher. That is a hallmark of Unity. Either you love it or you don't love it. Cinnamon uses a different way of doing things, which is much more like XFCE, where you pop up activities from a button, from a start button. That is more familiar to Apple and Windows users. So anyway, as you might expect, Mint 21 will be based on Ubuntu 22.04 Jammy, which means that it will also be supported for a long period of time, and it's powered by a new kernel, 5.15 LTS. For me, that meant that some of my up-to-date Intel hardware, which is 10th gen, 11th gen, that this is now supported by the kernel, much better than it was before. That's an important difference in kernel 5.15. Interestingly enough, on Chromebooks, The keyboard is better supported in kernel 5.15. It has a Chromebook-style keyboard in its keyboard selection, which is really nice because then I could skip a step that I had to do with Gallium, that I had to do with everything except Gallium that I tried on a Chromebook. I had to remap the keyboard, and that takes forever. And it doesn't stick for very long if you do any changes in the system. So now I finally have a slightly modified Chromebook keyboard in Linux, in Ubuntu. So anyway, this kernel has some nice new features. It supports newer hardware and it supports different range of hardware. But it also lost support for some things as well. There's a new upgrade utility they're working on to make things significantly easier for newcomers who will want to upgrade their current Mint installations to a major release, such as Linux Mint 21. And here's all that we have so far about what that's going to look like. Upgrades toward a point release within the same major version of Linux, Mint, are quite simple and easy to perform. And this is the developer talking about this. Upgrades toward the next major release, however, are much more complex. So if you're moving just from, say, 20.2 to 20.3, that's not really a big deal. But moving from 20.3 to 21.0 or .1, that's a much less straightforward process, much more error prone. And so previously this required an advanced level of knowledge and experience. And these major version upgrades were performed using the command line, as we saw for Ubuntu. But at Mint, they are now working on an upgrade tool, which will make this a GUI upgrade tool, which will make this significantly easier in the future. It promises features like fully graphical interface, localization in various languages, the ability to perform more checks to ensure the upgrade process will go smoothly, and it's fully configurable. And there's the ability to preserve your choice of mirrors instead of being booted back to the default, as well as the ability to provide and handle various different upgrade scenarios. That might include different places to install. It might include different boot configurations. In addition, the new upgrade tool won't force you to remove the custom repositories and what are called PPAs, which are used for sideloading. Just think of it as sideloading apps from somebody's personal proprietary archive. And so you really have to know who the developer is if you're going to load anything from a PPA. Don't just willy-nilly do it. You can cause serious problems. That said, I have a few PPAs I use. And you can be warned about orphan packages. These are packages that no longer connect with what are called dependencies. There are things they need that are no longer usable, or they are packages that are no longer needed and could be removed. In the command line, we would use the command auto remove, apt auto remove, and that'll get rid of most of your orphan packages, but not all. But here you can keep the orphan packages just in case something needs that Python 2 or GTK 2 or something like that there doesn't seem to be any software using it, but you know you've got something that might need it. That's just based on your experience. If you're at the beginner level, go ahead and let them go. You'll probably not notice the difference. So the new upgrade tool is the #1 priority for the Mint team at the moment. And LMDE is Linux Mint Developer Edition. And these are pre-release editions. We don't worry about them. Then they're going to put it into the upgrades from 20.3 to 21. And here are a couple of screenshots. I'm going to try to get these images a little bigger. Screenshot #1. This is what you'll be greeted with. And screenshot #2. This is one of the things it's doing once it gets down to business. So you will see what it's doing. Kept packages you want to avoid, because that usually means that's something that's either orphaned or it is something that is being held because there's no install candidate in the new version, or it's something that cannot be upgraded. Okay, so I'm about to conclude this. Yeah, I'm going to conclude this article. And are there any questions about the Mint update that is upcoming and the updater for that?
Well, just to clarify, Bob.
Yeah.
The whole thing about Linux Mint and everything was upgrading, not really installing for the first time. So were you talking about earlier that you had some other things lined up that would demonstrate installing?
Yes, later.
Okay.
Right now, I'm talking about the Mint upgrade within the context that Ubuntu just had a major long-term stability upgrade.
Okay.
This is by way of background, and because we are most of us using Mint, I want to prepare you for what you're going to be facing in the coming months.
Right.
And so this is all let's just say prerequisite before we get down to business. I'm also going to do a little bit about what I'm talking about when I talk about different flavors within the Ubuntu Linux family. So I will no doubt have to update the contents here as the time for the upgrade comes nearer, because there probably will be some changes.
Now, are we going to get a notice then that when this is coming out?
First, both Tim and I keep up to date. We will notify you if you attend the meetings and if we continue to hold meetings. Second, you can check out sources like the various Ubuntu specific news sources. I already pointed you toward 9to5 Linux, OMG Linux. Tim probably will have in his FYI mailings or postings if we get them onto the new website for CCS. Tim will probably cover a little of this too. I mean, the newsletter is not specifically Linux centric, but it contains Linux information. It contains phone information. And if you want to get on Tim's mailing list, either you know how or Tim will remind us.
Now, does this mean, like right now I'm on linuxmint.com on my other computer.
Okay.
Now, and right now it's showing Uno Linux Mint 20.3. You think
Right.
it'll show the 21 then?
When it becomes available to the mainstream, it will show 21.0 Vanessa.
Yeah, as an upgrade then. Because I
Yeah.
think what happened when I upgraded to 20.3, originally it was 20.2 and it showed
Yeah.
there was an upgrade. And I upgraded to 23. Now the screen is just showing 20.3.
Yeah, that's the mainstream one these
Yeah.
days. Anybody who installs 20.2 will probably be offered through the Mint updater. They will be offered the upgrade to 20.3.
Yeah.
That's what they want you to be on. And I think for this group, it'd be a good idea to be on that too, for those who are doing updates and upgrades of older versions. So speaking of the Mint homepage, since Mint is one of the flavors of Ubuntu, first let me give you some advice before you do anything with Linux or any operating system. Keep detailed notes on every step you do and what happens, and keep those notes someplace off the computer you're working on. Keep your notes organized and as brief as possible without sacrificing your ability to reconstruct exactly what you were doing and how things went right and how things went wrong. That's the best way not to keep repeating your mistakes, and it's the best way not to lose a whole lot of the data you want to save. The second best way is that backup strategy, which we will probably be getting into. Depends on how far we get tonight. So let's see the Mint flavor. And here on my screen is Mint 2003.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about. That's what I've got.
Yeah. And one thing we can do is we can do the About Linux Mint. And this is the page where you get everything about what Mint is all about, its purpose, a little bit of history, and various releases. And if you see the growth and development of Linux Mint, you get a much better feel for how it evolved and how it came to be what it is today. That may help you to understand how Mint works nowadays. And so with the 2012 to present modern era is when cinnamon was introduced, which is the flavor that most of us would prefer to use. And then they talk a little about mint cinnamon, and that's up to the present day. Some people like mate because it's lightweight, but it's not as intuitive to people who come from Windows or Apple. And then you can have interesting things about the project, and there are links to the Mint community. There's a Mint community on Reddit, on Discord. There are local communities. There's GitHub, Facebook, Twitter, and some IRC chat. And
Still
there's an official website, and there's a blog, and there are forums. Let me just take you to the forums before I take you into the next flavor that I want to show you. See, these are the forums. And this is where there's been some discussion about new releases and all kinds of other stuff. This is one other place where you'll see any announcement as to when the new release will come out. All of it comes from their homepage. And then, of course, you've got the all-important download. Let's just see if I end up there. If you're ready to download, you can download it. And what you will download is going to end up as an ISO or a disk image. Okay. Okay. Continuing.
That gives you the detailed instructions on how to install that too. So that's what Dennis wanted to look at.
It gives you instructions for one way to install it.
Yeah.
We have used a slightly different way. And I also, anyway, there is also another slight variant on how Tim showed in his video, and I'll probably get to that pretty soon. Second flavor I want to just show for a little while is the mainstream Ubuntu from which all this comes, just so that you can see what it is. And being canonical, they want you to accept a bunch of cookies. So they give you the features and things about Ubuntu, and they give you an overview of Ubuntu for desktops. And these are various apps that are being represented as to what they include that they want you to look at, half of which I don't use, but there is VLC Player, Firefox, Skype, and and there are also email things. And here is a screen, and this is very similar to the default screen of Ubuntu Unity as well. That's what their default screen would look like for mainstream Ubuntu. That's the jellyfish. And it's all jammy because of all the glitter that's built into it, I guess. And this is how an application looks. By default, they use a dark mode. By default, very little is on the desktop in GNOME and Wayland. Everything's on a sidebar, which is a GNOME sidebar, and it's pretty clunky. This is going to be your activities button from which you get your all apps to expand outward into one of these app windows. It's not terribly different from Cinnamon, but it's different enough. I would not recommend a beginner to try to use it. But there are things you can do with mainstream Ubuntu which may be a bit more powerful than some of the things you can do with Linux Mint. Mint does have some limitations. I don't think most of us will run up against those limitations anytime soon. And let's go into, there are other flavors including Xubuntu, just to show you. These are different representations of different flavors of Ubuntu. And XFCE always has this little mouse. And that's one of the additions, very lightweight. So I'm going to skip Ubuntu. Ubuntu is another lightweight Ubuntu. And we'll just take a look a little bit at its desktop. And it does something that XFCE does. It has a button from which the various categories of applications will come up. And you go on from there. And you can pin items to this bottom panel, which is like a taskbar. And I'm going to skip Budgie. Kylin is actually a Chinese language-centric Ubuntu. But it is not the Ubuntu that China itself is officially developing. So don't worry about that. Ubuntu Mate, Ubuntu Studio is for media people. And if you want to set up a machine for recording Zoom, this is the one you would use, Ubuntu Studio. And then there's the one that I have on my Chromebook, which is Xubuntu. Of all the Ubuntus, this is probably the starkest and most Spartan. It has a very clean desktop, and if you want to find anything, you have to go to this little whisker menu, it's called, with the mouse, and then you'll have a drop-down that will show you your applications. You can put stuff onto the desktop, but it's a very sparse and Spartan type of desktop environment. It has a top panel instead of a bottom taskbar, and things can be pinned to the top panel, but you want to keep those to a minimum in Xubuntu. And this desktop background can be customized to something if you like it, something else better. So that's flavors of Ubuntu, and I just want to show, I have an article included about the present status of Unity, which is now known as Lemuri, in mainstream Ubuntu. Unity 7 was the last Unity they included with Ubuntu. And I think I can X out this guy. So this article discusses getting Unity 7 onto mainstream Ubuntu. And this is going to give you the option of switching from GNOME to Unity and from Wayland to Xorg. And let me tell you, screen sharing under Wayland is a pain in the butt. It doesn't work very well. Whereas Xorg is proven and it works nicely with Zoom and with Jitsi Meet and other kinds of communication software. And so it gives you all kinds of things about installing the Unity desktop. I'm going to see if I scroll down whether or not they actually show us what you end up with. Oh, you will also be switching from your greeter, which was GNOME, over to the kind of greeter we've got in Cinnamon, which is like DM. That's a technicality. But it does change things that you can do. The light DM that we use picks up on, or can pick up on, your desktop wallpaper and carry it over into your greeter so it looks prettier. That's not something that GNOME does with GDM 3. So that's handled differently. So trying to personalize or customize the GNOME desktop environment is a real pain, whereas doing it with Unity or with Cinnamon is really a whole lot easier. And this is a screenshot. I'm going to open the image on its own. This is Unity in mainstream Ubuntu. Not to be confused with Ubuntu Unity, the fork, the different operating system. And so it has a launcher along the side. it has something you punch on in and you get your apps. If it shows up, I'm going to do this on my Ubuntu Unity, which works the same way. It uses Unity 7 as well. Can you guys see all my apps now?
Yeah.
So this is how you get your all apps in from the Unity launcher. And if you want to go up and down the side, you can get to various applications. I'm going to just pop into view. I'm just going to throw a terminal up here. You may not see the terminal. It may be a black spot. Let me see. Just a second. Let me move the correct thing. Yeah, that's got the purple background. It's not just a black box. So this is the terminal that is used for a lot of things. And this is the file manager in Ubuntu Unity. Each one of these Ubuntu flavors uses its own different file manager. In Mint Cinnamon, you've got, I believe it's Nemo. In Xubuntu, there's Thunar, which is much more Spartan, less capable file explorer. And here, I think this is also Nemo in Ubuntu Unity. But in GNOME, you would have Nautilus. And the traditional Ubuntu that had Unity 7 also used Nautilus. Nautilus was capable of expansion and all kinds of plugins, but once they went over to Wayland, they broke that, and you can no longer do that. So I no longer recommend Nautilus, but anyway, you can install other file explorers, but this is just another way of viewing your files. And it can get into my documents, and it can go back to where I was with my meetings and all that. So we'll close that for the time being, and we'll close this. So that's how to get Unity on there. And then there are a couple of different articles. One is about Unity 8, which is Lemiri, which is the newest Unity. And it's had a few improvements, apparently. But here's the one I've got on my mainstay computer. This is Ubuntu Unity. And this is the one that was developed in India by the young fellow. And you would hardly know the difference between this and Unity 7 on the original Ubuntu clear up through 1804. You can use Unity Tweak, which is a good way of customizing. And there are various reviews and whatnot. And what I want to do is also Ubuntu Unity does have a forum. We'll see if that goes up. Yeah, that comes up. And so you can... They even have questions about, well, how do you set up Nautilus like we used to have? And various bugs. And somebody inevitably has to ask, well, do you support Wayland? Because some people feel, well, you're not really up to date unless you've got Wayland. Okay. And how do you put in non-snap versions of the snap applications? Ubuntu mainstream has gone way crazy on snaps from their snap store. But like Mint, Ubuntu Unity does not like snaps. And they discourage you from installing them. You can put snaps in by putting in a module called snapd, and you will bloat your system instantly, and it will slow down. Whereas if you use Flatpak, then that's another way of packaging applications as a single package, so you don't run into dependency issues. And Flatpak is much easier on the system. However, it also does result in applications that launch more slowly. And the dash is this thing, so they're talking about the Unity dash. And Thunderbird is their main email program. One of these days I can get to that. Calendars, and somebody's using some kind of dash to dock, which quite frankly I don't think should be used because it's a GNOME shell extension. And GNOME is not really what Unity is about. And Flatpak. There's Flatpak theme integration and stuff like that. This guy's interested in the dark theme. I always am interested in how to make apps into light theme when they, by default, are dark, because my computer is not a phone. Anyway, verifying the authenticity of ISOs is just simply a question of doing a public security key, and there already is SHA checksum, which you probably ought to learn how to do if you're going to download anything, and some other things about it. So that's their community. And that's the other one. The heads-up display is not present in Ubuntu Unity, and if you want to read more about it, I've got an article that tells you about heads-up display. So, how are we doing on time? Is it getting to be? We're getting into this.
You got
What?
About 55 minutes.
Yeah. Okay. So I think what I'm going to do is do a little bit on making a backup before you do an upgrade. And then I think my next thing is the upgrade install. And that should be a pretty brief review. I'm making a backup before upgrading. What time shift? Let me show you what time shift looks like. I just installed it. At least I thought I did. Well, maybe not in here. Let's see. No. Okay, well, it should be in here, but it isn't for some reason. Okay. Then we will go to time shift. That, which comes standard in Mint, is a backup program, which I think we've been shown a little bit about. And this is where it makes various kinds of backups. And you can set up scheduling for it, things of that nature. I think we have gone over this in our meetings before. And they tell how to install it. And we go down to, this is what it would look like if I did have it installed correctly, and let's see if, oh, supposedly Ubuntu software does have time shift. Let me just do a little side trip and see if time shift is in here. Time shift. All right, let's do it as a single word. There it is.
There you go.
Yeah, questions? Comments? Okay, now I'm just going to install it and password. Okay, I've authenticated. It may take a little while so we can, oh, it's there already. It requires you to open it with your root password.
Yep.
And then you will make different, if you have a special file system called ButterFS, you need a different kind of snapshot. So let's do a next. Estimating system size. This will take a while because this is a large system. It's a large install, but it's not as large as it used to be. And we're not doing 2, we're doing, now you have to know which one is Ubuntu. And there is nomenclature about partitions. which is Linux specific. Don't worry about it because it also gives you the friendly name. And it gives you, if you gave it a label, it'll have its label name. And in this case, this is the one that I would be using. Okay, next. And I can do daily, weekly, or monthly. I am going to uncheck daily. Eventually, I will probably set up a schedule. But right now, I'm going to leave it like that, and it's going to bug the heck out of me every time I try to use it. Now, here's the thing. The home directory can be backed up. And you can include only the hidden files. Those are most of your configuration files in your home directory. And they're most of the places where you'll run into the problem. You can't copy that file as user because it may have root ownership. But I can also do that. And I'll have a very big backup. Root will back up the system but exclude the home directory. So normally by default, it'll exclude everything. And root, you would include all files because you want to make an actual snapshot. This is in addition to any image backup or any clone you may make. And then you can run that. I'm going to stop at this point because I haven't set up where to put it and I don't have the drive attached to which I would back everything up. So, and this is what it would indicate. It would have a create, a restore, a delete, and a browse. But the thing is, timeshift would only work if you were actually in. It would only work if you were in an actual working, running Linux environment. And if you really want to do a backup that you can restore, you need to have something that you can restore from boot rescue media, a USB drive that can be booted. So anyway, that's the basics on timeshift and also installing some stuff from the Ubuntu Software Center. And the article goes further into creating a snapshot, selecting what to do, and selecting where to do it, selecting when to do it. And unfortunately, they don't show you how it decides where to put it. Okay, so now I do want to show something that I think most of us are not going to be comfortable using. This is a command line-like tool, but it boots off of its own disk image or its own bootable external drive, USB drive. And this is Clonezilla. And I'm just going to show that this is for disk imaging and cloning. It actually is much more limited than things like Macrim Reflect Free. And whereas Macrim Reflect Free will do Linux, it will back up and restore, but you do not have the option any longer with Macrim Reflect to explore a Linux backup and selectively replace files. And that's one reason why you've got timeshift. It can be used to replace corrupted files and corrupted directories. And sometimes this would be a very useful thing to do if you are able to boot Linux, but you've got something that's not working and you know where in the system the problem is. And it tells how to install it live. And my point is you can download an ISO file, an ISO or disk image file. This is useful to be able to do with Clonezilla, and it's useful to be able to do with Linux installers. And you might want to put all of them onto the same USB flash drive. Now that flash drives are getting bigger and bigger, and they have the capacity to hold many disk images, But how do you run? How do you choose which one to run and run just one disk image from a collection? How do you build a collection? Well, we are going to get to that pretty soon. And I do want to save a little time to go through the install process if you're going to do a clean install. So there's more on time shift in a couple of additional references. Now, for backing up user data, I simply copy my home directory to an external drive. It's possible to use compression or to use things like rsync if you get really good at doing these kinds of backups. Back in time used to be used, but it has not kept up its development. So it's not compatible very much with current versions of Linux, especially Ubuntu, Mint, and what Mint will become. Now here's a little used tip that really helps if you're building from scratch. You can save the markings of what software has been installed from most of your common repos just by installing the Synaptic Package Manager. And this is what it looks like. And it has a little popover, which I like to allow it to do, that shows stuff. But the important thing is, over here, you have categories of how the software was installed, including software that's not installed. And what you have are green boxes that mark what has been installed, Ubuntu logos for things that come from the mainstream Ubuntu repositories. And there's additional software. If you read about or hear about some software you need or you'd like to try, this is one place where you can find it and install it. You can also do a search for particular software. For example, if I want to do the Linux kernel and I want to do 5.15, I don't know if it's in here. There it is. Everything you'd ever want from kernel 5.15. Not recommended for amateurs to be messing with, but it's all there. And so the main thing I'm saying is this will back up the software markings. And you use the sections or the status. Status is the one you want to use because status is what you want to back up. And these various categories are how things were installed. But anyway, it all gets marked, and then you can import that into a new install or into another computer, and you can install the same software. And you'll have a system that pretty much mirrors the other system. And just try doing that with Windows. You can transfer your software. That's really neat. Portable software.
Yeah.
Only it's fully installed software. So I like being able to do stuff like that. The other thing you can do is keep lists and notes. Both Flatpak and Snap also will list everything they've installed, and then you can do that through a command in the command line. And then you can just copy the contents of the command line. Let me show you this. I'm just going to list my Flatpaks. It'll ask for my password. And that's everything I've got that is a Flatpak install. And I can just do, in my case, the edit is way up in the top bar. This is a Unity thing. Unity moves the window controls for an app into the top bar. That is unique to Unity as far as I know. And that gives me a select all. And then I can copy and I can put it into a document. Let's just say I want it in a text document. Let me get a new text document. I have gedit, which I like. There are any of a number of other text editors, and you guys probably have, let's see, there's Pluma, and there's another one you guys have that I think is just called Write in in Mint, but it's a text editor. And you'll just paste it in there and save it someplace. Now you've got a full listing of what you installed through Flatpak. And you can do the same for Snap. So I'm going to close this, and it's going to give me a dire warning. And there you go. So, do that, and I'd better get on with the upgrade install. I want to introduce you folks, I've done this before, but I want to introduce you to a tool called Ventoy. The only reason I'm doing this is this tool allows keeping a collection of ISOs, disk images, on one flash drive, so you don't have to juggle flash drives and you don't have to invest in a hub and switch between flash drives and remember which one is which. But you'll still have to reboot in between each transition from one ISO to another. Like you're doing gparted, then you'll have to reboot in order to go into the installer for your Linux. And then if you have to repair Grub, you'll go into the Grub repair disk. So there are two articles here, and they're both about Ventoy. And it is a way of creating a bootable USB drive. You can use it in Windows, you can use it in Linux. And the main thing is it puts a basic program onto your flash drive, a very small program, which will allow you to keep different disk image files on the same flash drive. And also, you can update what's on there just by deleting one ISO and copying a new ISO on there. I have in my documents, in my home directory actually, I have a folder called, I have a directory called ISO. And it's got all of these different ISOs, which I have at various times put onto Ventoy, used with Ventoy, on a USB flash drive. And all on the same drive? Well, not all of these, but a selection of them. And these are various licenses that came along. And one of these is Linux Mint. This was 2002, and I should have 20.3, but I don't think I do, because that was an in-place upgrade. But this was the original 20.2 Cinnamon. And I have Ubuntu Desktop, Ubuntu Unity, and this is the Ventoy download as it comes. And I kept that, and you just unpack that into this, and this is what lives on your computer. And when you plug in a flash drive, you run whichever one of these GUIs is appropriate for your particular system architecture. Usually it will be the x86-64, unless you're stuck with 32-bit architecture. And when you double-click on it, password, if you have a Ventoy drive in place, you'll see the version on the device. And you'll be able to select which device you're going to use. Right now I only have one USB device plugged in, and it has a ready status, and it'll have a status bar that'll show the progress as you install Ventoy or as you update it. 1.0.77, to my knowledge, is the latest Ventoy in the package. You must run this as root because of what it does. And that's what the little padlock says. It needs to run as root. So, there is also a web UI, which I'm not going to get into. So, between putting that onto the flash drive and putting the ISOs on the flash drive, let me skip down to, I think they have a screenshot. This is the command line way of dealing with it, which I do not recommend.
Ooh.
All right, this is a screenshot, if I can get it.
Oh.
All right. Something didn't work here. Open image. There. This is the screen I just showed you, which is what you'll see on your computer. And when you proceed in putting it on the USB drive, you'll be asked to confirm if you really want to format the disk. This is the point at which you have to realize whether or not you're putting it in the right place and you're not going to overwrite something you want to save. And then upon successful completion, you'll get the congratulations, successfully installed screen. And at that point, this is what you'll see. You'll see the version matches between what you've got installed and what's available in the package. This is pretty dated. Last but not least, this is a pretty good screenshot. The fellow had to use the old camera trick like Tim had to, but it shows selections that are available. As soon as you boot up Ventoy, you'll get to choose which ISO you're going to boot. And in this case, he's got CentOS and FreeBSD, but I've got like Mint, Ubuntu Unity, Ubuntu, a few others, and I've got Gparted, and I've got Grub boot repair disk. So I'm not going to go through very much about, I didn't mean to close that. I'm not going to go into very much about the actual install process because Tim has already done a video on a meeting on that, and he did an extra meeting on that, as a matter of fact. I may be able to dig up a reference for yet another perspective on the same thing, which incorporates Ventoy and the Mint install, which I did with a fellow from another user group here in Massachusetts. Okay, you select the OS you want to install and then proceed with the installation. Let me see if there's anything else important here before I begin to wrap up. Why I choose a clean install? It's because of long-term stability releases. As I say, there's a lot that changes from one LTS version to another. And I don't want to keep all the old garbage and have stuff left over that's way out of date. So the installer. So this is the basic process minus the installation itself. In the installation, you get a screen. Okay. In the installation, you get a screen that by default is going to choose a particular partition to install into. There's also an option that says something else. And I choose something else because if you're going to install over an existing installation and wipe it out, by default, the Ubuntu and Mint installers want to create a new partition. And this is going to use up disk space, and it's going to leave you with your old installation still there. In order to overwrite the old installation, you have to go choose something else and then target that particular partition, and you better know what its Linux name is, not what its friendly name is. It'll be SD something. Maybe SDA something, maybe something else. So anyway, that is mostly covered. I think even choose something else was covered in our video on installing. And there is a step-by-step in this article, which I will include with screenshots. So, the download of the ISO, creating the bootable media, and there's Ventoid described here. There's Rufus, which we used, which is described. There's Etcher, Balena Etcher. I create a virtual machine. We aren't doing skipping down. VM workstation, no. And let's see if they have any screenshots of the actual install. Virtualbox. Here, this is very similar to the installer. It'll have this welcome screen, keyboard layout, and updates to software. And on the next screen, installation type, choose something else. If you have any existing data in the partition you want to put it in, something else is what you choose. Installation type. And there will be advanced features. We aren't doing that. We are doing none. We're not using zettabyte encryption system or ZFS, zettabyte file system, because that's for servers. And then it will give you a notification. Write the changes to the disk, and you'll do that. Then if you're successful with the setup of the partition, it'll ask you time zone. By the way, we're not here. I'm over here. You're over here. And who are you? That's picking a username, choosing a password, etc. And then it'll just give you the welcome and the progress of copying the files. It takes a long time. And eventually the installation should be complete, and it'll ask you to restart your computer. And if all goes well, you'll boot into it. If you can't boot into Linux, you may have to do some repairs. Also, step 5 in this article shows you some things about configuration, which I'm not going to get into. We've covered that before. But you might get into some problems. And I have some notes on backing up and copying things as root. And they're just notes about copying files as root in case you have stuff that's in the system areas or stuff that is root owned in your home directory. You do not want to mix user data and root data in the same directories in your backups, preferably not even the same partition, because you can get into permissions issues that would cause terrible problems when you try to restore anything. I also keep clones and images stored separately from data backups. This document also includes some information and references about using Macram Reflect to backup and restore Linux. And there are post-install things to do. But you may find that you can't boot into Linux. And that's when you may need to repair Windows boot. That's where Macram Reflect is a nice thing to have with a good working backup. A Windows backup in this case, because you're going to do something which involves Windows boot repair. And you can fix Windows boot problems with Macram Reflect free. And this is their tutorial that tells you how to do that and shows you. They have step-by-step with screenshots. So you're not going to go wrong with this tutorial. And then there's Grub Repair Disk. Grub Boot Repair Disk is in case you can't boot your Linux. And it's a very simple user interface. I'm going to enlarge this. It'll get a little blurry, but this is the repair disk, and it has a recommended repair. That is just simply a script that repairs the most frequent errors that there are. When I ran this on my non-booting upgrade in my NUC PC, it said, effectively, we think Grub was installed into the wrong partition. And it was. It was installed into the internal drive. And that's not right for my system. So do you want us to install Grub and update it in your Ubuntu partition? Well, it knew that there was a partition that had Ubuntu on it. And I said, yeah, sure, why not? So that particular partition got repaired. It got Grub installed into it and updated. And then when you're done, you can create a boot info summary. You can do that as a before and as an after if you really want. And the boot info summary is a really lengthy technical description of everything that happened and everything that would happen if you tried to boot. And there are some advanced options for this too. But the most important thing is you have a log of what happens, a log of what was, a log of what is, the changes that were made. And you have the repair done. 9 times out of 10, this is all you'll need. Otherwise, you're stuck doing a lot of troubleshooting and a lot of guesswork. And I don't like guesswork. So I'm coming to the end of what I think is essential to include. Just to summarize, there's additional info. On my Ventoy drive, I have various Linux ISOs for live testing and installation, gparted for partitioning and file system repairs, Grub repair ISO for boot issues of Linux. I can also keep any special system or configuration files there. Ventoy will allow you to keep files on the same drive as your bootable ISOs. You can't do that with a single ISO flash drive. Not easily anyway. And so there's a lot of advantages. By the way, Macreen Reflect free, the WinRE environment, you can also create a folder with files or drivers or other things that you might need while you're in that rescue environment. It's the Windows recovery environment. And it's very flexible. You can explore your current installation, and you can recover files from your current installation if you need to blow it away. All kinds of things you can do with Windows. But it cannot explore Linux. And my Linux backup drive, these are external hard drives on which I back up things. I back up my user home directory, my software markings, and a list of other softwares from Synaptic, Snap and Flatpak listings, listed in the command line way. I use AppImage, and I use out of repo or PPA installed software, so I have lists of that manually listed. That's where you have to keep notes. Other special configuration or settings files. I have a couple of files that have to do with sound, and I have a file that has to do with graphics that always needs to be put back anytime I do an upgrade. I keep the root home and other important root system directories, again, special things that have been customized. Most of you won't have that. I have also customized Grub, and that includes the Grub boot and etc. directories. Those are also copied as root data. If you haven't customized Grub, and if you haven't customized anything in your greeter or anything like that, you don't need to do this. And just one note on Grub Customizer. On some systems, this tool can do more harm than good. It's a case of with great power comes great responsibility. Use it carefully. I'll just show you for a second what Grub Customizer looks like. But you're probably not going to want to do much with it. But if I want to see, come on, try again. There. Now, it takes a little while to populate, but what it's going to show is the Grub menu entries. You can rearrange them if you feel a need to do so. Often when new kernels install, they just go willy-nilly all over the place. And they're all out of order, out of sequence, and it's awfully difficult to track them or to scroll down through them in the 20 or 30 seconds you have at most before the Grub screen disappears and you boot into whatever's on top. Not necessarily what you wanted. And you can also boot into Windows from your Grub menu if you've got Windows. And if you've got another Linux, you can boot into the other Linux. And there are even advanced options for that on my system. Very complicated system. Yours won't be that complicated. General settings. Now, there's a predefined default entry or the previously booted entry. I prefer to predefine. And that's where I made my selection, which happens to be this guy. That's the one I normally will boot into. Although in some systems I like a low latency kernel, and that's for technical reasons. Now here's something I did you probably won't do. I use a theme with my Grub boot screen. That makes the printing more readable. That's the main reason I do it. I don't have to specify the fonts and the colors and all kinds of technical garbage I don't want to get into. I just downloaded a theme that looked nice at gnomelook.org, and this was the Crunchy Ubuntu theme, and I had to make one edit within the theme in order to rename its style sheet, basically. It's a style sheet, and I had to rename it as theme because it was originally named Theme Blue because there were lots of different themes, different colors. And the particular theme I'm using is a blue theme. And so the theme is Crunchy Ubuntu, and the file is just theme. And I would have to find this theme thing again, and I'm not going to go through that whole process because I know where it is, but I don't think you guys need to. And then I would do the save, and it would update Grub. The other thing you should get to know, if you ever do need to make any changes to Grub, there's a command, again using sudo. If you do any changes to Grub, this is going to have to happen. And this is what it'll do. This is exactly what Grub Customizer is doing, only you're seeing it as it happens, play by play. And you'll see the things that will appear in your Grub menu list, or at least in the main list. So if anything goes wrong with this, it will send out some kind of an error message that it couldn't find something. That's important to know because that's an early warning that you need to do something to repair your Grub configuration. And usually I will run this command after a successful upgrade. As soon as I've run my software updates, I'll run this update just to make sure it's aware of everything that is there now. The new kernels, the new operating system that I have just installed. I'm sure I've covered a lot of stuff. There's probably a lot of questions. I'm going to stop screen share and open it up to general discussion or anything Tim feels is important.
Now, what is Grub used for again?
Grub is the bootloader. Windows has a bootloader, but all you see in Windows is that wheel that rotates.
Yeah.
That's all you see in Windows unless you have set up something else. Macrim Reflect sets up, if you let it sets up a boot option. And so you'll get an extra screen where you select between Macrim Reflect Rescue Environment or Windows. And then you just select Windows and you go through. Or you select Macrim Reflect and you get into a rescue environment that you can use if you get that far in the boot process, but Windows won't boot.
Yeah,
and you can do a Windows boot repair from there.
Just think of Grub as besides.
So anything else?
Just think of Grub as a menuing system, especially when you have multiple operating systems on one system, it gives you the ability to select which one you want to boot into every time you boot up. Usually, if the system only has one version of OS, you may not even see the grub menu. It just goes right in and gives you that particular OS, and you just log in and do your thing. But that'll vary a little bit. Some will still show a grub menu that's very brief, and part of the reason for that is to have the option of testing memory and advanced options, which will, if you're having the regular standard boot up not work, then you go into the advanced options and it gives you some graduated levels of going backwards into older versions of setup configuration that one or more of them may allow you to boot your system up, get into it, and perhaps make repairs so that it boots normal.
Yeah, when Linux does kernel updates, so does Windows. It's just that they don't tell you that they are kernel updates. They're just updates, and Windows will roll all kinds of stuff into its cumulative updates. Some of which is kernel level, some of which is other stuff. Linux keeps the kernel updates discrete, and you can even not accept them if you don't want them. But if you do a kernel update or you let Linux do a kernel update, part of its cleanup is it will get rid of the oldest kernel, and you may be in a new kernel that may not work with all of your hardware, and you may need to go back to an older kernel. The Grub selection menu will let you do that. And then if you find the older kernel is better, you can set that as the default.
Now this exists on a USB?
No, it lives in your drive.
Oh, it's on the drive.
Where your Linux is. It is either a separate directory that it operates out of, or a separate partition it operates out of, depending on how you've set up your Linux, or it may even run off of a different disk the way mine does. So Grub is very flexible as to where it can live. The Windows bootloader is very specific as to where it needs to live. It has to be in the same partition as Windows in almost every case, or in an EFI boot partition. Well, have I got everybody confused?
Yes.
Let me get my documents so you guys can go over the references when you want to. You almost certainly will want to.
The one thing, Ted, with Linux, unlike Windows or Mac OS, is that it's kind of like having no idea of something specific, like a specific make and model of car, and for the first time you're going out there and you see all the different makers, the models they have, the colors and options they have, and you got to narrow it down yourself as to what the heck you're going to buy. And in a sense, Linux is the same way, with all the distributions, all the options that are available. It's up to you to customize it the way you want to do it. And that's why there's so many distributions. A lot of people like creating a customized version and then put it out there on the market in case other people like to have the same setup. And so that's why you have such diverse types of installations out there. Over 600.
Okay, has everybody got the document in chat? Do you see it?
Yep.
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 And are you able to download it?
Yep.
Cool.
Looks like it.
Then I have done my duty.
Okay. Do we have any other issues we need to discuss for this meeting?
Before you shut it, let me make sure I have it on my, where I downloaded it.
Yes, definitely make sure you can open it. It's a PDF, so it should be openable. Or you can just send me your email address and I can post my email address for you to send it to me, and I can send you an attachment.
No, you don't have to.
Okay.
It got lost in with the other PDFs that are on my desktop.
Yeah,
I downloaded.
you should never have a folder that just says PDF. That's
No,
that's a good way to lose a lot of stuff. Dennis, you want me to email you the attachment?
Please. It doesn't even show in my
All right.
It's
Chromebook.
not going to be
Yeah.
on the Chromebook. You have to be on a non-Chromebook.
Okay.
I'll save the chat and I'll send it to Dennis as an attachment.
I can
No need to panic.
I can print it off the other computer, but I can't. I don't know where to save it.
You go down to Zoom, down to chat, click on it, and then you can click on his post and download it.
I've got his email. I'll just send it.
I got it.
I'm sure there'll be other reasons I'll need Dennis's email. I'm sure there will be plenty of questions.
Okay, do we have everybody to the point where we call it a night, or are there other questions or issues we need to discuss?
I'm
Well,
good.
Okay, then let's call it a night for this time here, and I'll say good night to everybody.
Aloha.